Welcome into episode 124 of Press Pass. I'm your host, Kayla Anderson, alongside my co host, Joshua Perry. And first and foremost, I want to give my big congratulations to you, Joshua, because you have been nominated for a Sports Emmy. And you can go into a little bit of the specifics, but there are some really big names in there. I'm not saying that you're not a big name because you are, but I just think this is like well deserved. And I'm excited for you.
Well, I appreciate it. It's the sports Emmy category. It's a brand new category actually for emerging talent, and I am just as thankful and fortunate as can be to be a nominee in that category. And you're right, some of the names that were mentioned there, I'm like, oh my gosh, to be in the same conversation with some of those people is awesome. And just for where I'm at and my network as well, it's a big deal. Because
Yeah.
you look at some of the other people and they're coming from Fox Sports and
Hmm.
ESPN and NFL Network. And for us, with a smaller budget and a smaller footprint than some of those other networks, it is a big deal to be on that list and to be considered for that award. So I think it's very validating, and I'm very excited for the award ceremony on June 8th.
Yes, and we're wishing you the best of luck, all the listeners and myself included. So excited for you. And again, it's well deserved because, see, you might not be on ESPN or Fox Sports, but Big Ten is a big network, right? And does some really great work. And to me, it doesn't really matter who you're working for. When you clearly catch the eye of people and you see that, okay, you're doing good work up there, and then you're rewarded for it by being a nominee. I just think that that's the great part because anybody can see you on ESPN and some of these bigger networks. It's the small networks sometimes, it's the regional networks sometimes where you really find that great talent. You're just not exposed as much as these other people. So I think
Yeah.
that's what's really cool about it.
No, and
So
I mean this is my little bit of exposure as well, and I'm very fortunate for that. And you're right, to your point. Like when you're not, and I'll look at some of the other Emmy categories, and I'll keep this short because we're on a little bit of a time budget today. But for like best sporting event or best
yeah,
live event or whatever it is, it's typically the bigger events because those get the
yep.
eyeballs and they have the budget to pull them off. And so I really do realize the amount of work that goes in, not just for myself, but some of the people
Hmm.
behind the scenes to be in a position to be nominated for an Emmy. And so it's really exciting, really, really exciting stuff.
So, just another reason for you to tune into this podcast because
Exactly.
clearly Joshua knows what he's talking about and he brings a lot to the table. So, just another reason for you to listen if you are a first time listener. Uh,
Absolutely.
let's dive into our first topic of the day. And this is a little bit, it's not like brand new, but we didn't get to talk about it on the last episode because it came out just shortly after. But the NCAA has approved the transfer rule. And so, what I mean by that is starting next season, and when I say next season, I mean this upcoming fall, major college football and basketball players will be allowed to transfer one time before graduating without being required to sit out a year of competition. That's the biggie right there, right? So you can transfer and you don't have to sit out a full year, which in the past, that has been the issue. And I didn't know this, but I guess that this has been a thing for other college sports where they didn't have to sit out a year. So for some reason, I don't know why, college football and basketball was kind of the odd man out, but now it looks like everything is going to be on a even playing ground. And I know you specifically like this rule.
Yeah, and to your point, like it was always weird to me that you could be a field hockey player or a
Yeah.
lacrosse player and you could just transfer and you don't have to sit out a year
Hmm.
in the process. And so for football and basketball, it's definitely a big step. And I am 100% glad to see it because again, it puts a little bit more power in the players' hands to have more agency over their athletic careers. And specifically with a sport like football, where your shelf life is very short,
Hmm.
if you're not playing, it's less exposure if you're trying to go to the NFL. And
Right.
so you want to be in a situation where you can play. On the flip side of that, if you're a player who maybe it was a reach that you were going to an Alabama or a Notre Dame or an Ohio State, you know that your shelf life is short because all you have is college football. If you're not going to be an NFL player, you want to go somewhere where you know that you can play, and you don't want to sit
Mhm.
on the bench after having to transfer either. So I think it definitely benefits on both sides of that coin. And then the final thing on this for me, and this is what is kind of the overarching bigger idea for me,
Mhm.
is it makes coaches have to be real with players.
Yeah.
Too many times you see coaches kind of maybe lie to get kids on campus, and then you see them kind of lie
Yep.
to get kids there, and they will dangle out the threat that, hey, if you leave here, you're going to have to sit out another year anyway, so
Mhm.
you might as well just wait it out. And now it takes that from under them, and they have to be very transparent in the
Yep.
recruiting process. They have to be very transparent um, when the kids are on campus and things aren't necessarily going well.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to open some of these kids' eyes, and maybe some of the coaches as well, to some of the practices that they've been using in the past. Now,
Yeah.
where the negative comes in, and I'll use Ohio State as this example, they've got a three-man quarterback competition right now, and they've got the top quarterback in the 2021 class committed. It's going to hurt in that regard, where you're not going to be able to stockpile great players.
Mhm.
Quarterbacks, there's only one that goes on the field. So whoever is the third person on the list when they come out with the depth chart is probably going to be looking around at other schools. If you're
Mhm.
somebody who is in the class directly behind a starter who maybe has 2 or 3 more years left on campus, you might think about committing elsewhere where the quarterback lineage is not as crowded. So definitely some consequences, but overall, I like the power to be in the player's hands.
Yeah, and it's for me, it's not it's not giving them too much power in terms of,
Hmm.
"Oh, yeah, you can transfer 2 times." You can I mean, it's a one-time thing. You don't have to sit out a year. It's I think it's good for both sides, like you said, the coaching side and the player side of things. It's kind of maddening that it took this long
Hmm.
to figure out, but then again, we're never surprised because it's the NCAA running the show. Or should I say,
Well,
just not running anything.
exactly.
So, yeah, that's a good one, and I knew you'd be happy about that, so I was like, "We gotta touch on that to get Joshua's opinion." Okay, we're gonna move right along now, and, this is just a little fun subject that I wanted to bring into the podcast today. So, the recent talk, there's been this whole thing about the 15-team European Soccer League that is clearly not working out. And it's kind of like a super league and decided to put this together. There's been issues with it clearly, but recently this article came out and I thought it was really interesting. It's a Sporting News article, and it just was like posing the question of what would it be like if there was like a power league in college football, and clearly there has to be some sort of like a what's the word I'm looking for, like categories that you have to
Yeah, a little
check
bit of like
off,
a,
right?
yeah, yes,
Yeah, we're both
I
drawing
know.
blanks on the word today, but
Uh,
so they had put in
some
these
qualifications.
qualifications, thank you,
There we go.
perfect. It's not that hard, but clearly it was
Listen,
for
we
us.
we do this for a
I
living.
know, right? And we're like, "Oh, what's that word we're thinking about? Oh, yeah." So
uh,
the 4 R's is what they kinda use, so revenue, relevance, rings, and recruiting, which if you look at all that stuff, you could probably put together a pretty good, power conference. So, I wanted to ask you what, in terms of, let's say, top 10 teams would you put into like this type of power conference? Who
yeah.
would be the teams that you would select?
All right, so let's kind of go through this conference by conference and pick out some of the teams you'd want to include.
Yeah.
So, from the Big Ten conference, I'll start in my home conference, obviously Ohio State.
Yep.
I think you'd want Penn State in there, and Michigan from a revenue standpoint,
Yep.
not
Mhm.
relevance, rings, or recruiting, just the revenue for Michigan
Yes.
because it's Michigan right now. When you head down south to the SEC, you'd probably want Alabama, LSU, Georgia, and Florida.
Okay. Yep.
I think those would be all great choices. So now we're up to 7.
Okay.
In the ACC, you would definitely take Clemson.
Yep.
I'm not sure about any other team in there right now. And if we're talking
Yeah.
about 20, we can definitely expand that. But if we're just making a list of 10, that puts us up to 8. If I'm going out to the Big 12, you would want Texas and Oklahoma.
Okay.
and that would put us up to 10 right there. And then obviously with the pack, it's been a little bit of a rough ride for them, but you would definitely want USC
Right.
because you want to pull out the West Coast eyeballs, and
I
USC is
know.
a brand and they still make money. You would want to put Stanford in there, I believe, so you can get some of that, Pacific Northwest ish,
Sure.
Northern California, Oregon. You throw in there UCLA, we'd have a conversation about.
Okay, so I like the way you're going with this in terms of your selections. I'm gonna read to you the article, the selections they made, because I have a couple of problems with it. Okay, so
Okay. I like your problems.
right? No, I always have problems, whatever. At least I'm honest about it. So no surprise, they've got like Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma. I don't know if you mentioned
Mhm.
Oklahoma.
I did.
Okay, did you mention Notre Dame?
No, Notre Dame is one I would throw in there as well. I
Yep.
forgot to mention them.
Notre Dame, and then I know you're gonna love this one, Texas.
Yeah, Texas
Okay,
is in there
because
for
it's a
sure.
brand.
Yep.
Florida, Michigan, which you said,
Yep.
Florida State,
Did not say that one, but that is a brand.
yep,
They're down.
Auburn,
Okay.
um, Miami,
Sure. I should have said
yep,
Miami.
and that we forget sometimes just because of the relevance of the program right
Yeah.
now. You
Yep.
know, it's hard to kinda, like, remember these programs. There's so many of them that have been down. Penn State, USC, okay? So
Yep.
that's the list, right?
Yep.
But then so the
I
only
feel like Auburn's a little bit of the odd one out in that list, though.
Yeah, I do too, and also considering the fact that the only Pac-12 school mentioned in there is USC, and I do feel like as much as I dislike Oregon, just because I just dislike Oregon, I feel like they have a good case of being in the mix, and I know that this is based on those 4 Rs, so maybe that's
Sure.
why. And then this is their first 5 out, so give me
Hmm.
some of your thoughts on this. So, first 5 out, Boise State,
Mm,
yeah, questionable. Wisconsin,
I'll give you that.
Nebraska,
I'll give you that. Whether they're relevant or not,
right?
they do
I
numbers. They have a
know,
big fan
which
base.
is crazy because they haven't won much lately.
Yep.
Appalachian State.
That's a name.
Okay,
It's a name. It's intriguing to
okay,
people,
and then
and it's because of Michigan's lack of
that's
relevance.
we still talk about that to this day, right? And then
That was
that is
2007.
nuts. And it just
Nuts.
it does seem like it was yesterday. I mean, it doesn't seem that
Yep.
long ago. And then this last one, Tennessee.
Interesting. So,
I knew you'd have
if I
thoughts on
could,
this.
and so Tennessee, like big stadium, they've got a huge following. They're obviously very into football to the point where they will outwardly call for what coach they want to see and what coach they want
Sure,
fired.
sure.
Um, but could I interest you in a first 5 out scenario in a UCF or a Cincinnati?
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
especially as of late, and I do think
yeah,
you have to think about that, right? I mean, you're thinking about all these legacy or programs, right, that have been around
yep,
forever but not done anything lately. So then why would
yep.
you push out those programs that have done stuff lately and
I
may
mean,
not be power programs?
even from a standpoint of they felt confident enough in that list of putting App State in there.
I know,
Um,
right?
and it's not really an argument, but Cincinnati and UCF over the last 10 to 15 years have had more success as
Yeah,
programs. They have made it to New Year's Six or BCS games recently. And they're really those programs that are pumping out great coaches. I
yeah,
mean, Brian Kelly was at Cincinnati, and then we saw Mark D'Antonio was at Cincinnati as well, and it kind of vaulted him up
yep,
into the next job. We've seen what UCF has done,
yep.
for a guy in my conference at Nebraska, and then, putting my boy Heupel up there at Tennessee. So I feel like those are definitely programs that if we're having a conversation about a super conference, a mega conference, or whatever you want to call it, like it'd be really compelling to put those two schools in there.
Could this ever work? This is just something we did for fun, but could you ever see something like this working? Do you think we're going to get to the point where they're going to want to change so much in college football that it could come to something like this?
Yeah, I mean, if it makes dollars, it makes sense,
Mhm.
right? And these people like to gatekeep the money. And we've already seen a little bit of an evolution
Yeah.
with this Power Five, non Power Five delineation. And I think where this comes into play is some of the Power Five conferences might now consider leaving some of the traditional schools out that are really lagging in performance and in revenue and all of that in favor for some of these schools that maybe they aren't the traditional brands or they don't have the history in the conference, but they have the revenue and they have the star
Yeah.
power. And when you narrow down the number of teams as well, I think it really gets you to a very competitive place. I think it makes it a lot easier to determine who would be eligible for an expanded
Hmm.
playoff. All of those things come to mind. Now, will it happen? I don't know, because people in football
Yeah.
are also very
Yep.
traditional, they're stubborn. But if there is a financial case that can be made, it's probably going to be a
Exactly.
conversation.
You could never put it completely out of the picture. That's for sure. That's something that we've learned in terms of athletics in general.
Yep.
So speaking of your boy Heupel there in Tennessee, so I don't know if you saw this, but it looks
I've been
uh,
looking, I didn't see it.
okay. So it looks like former Michigan quarterback. We've talked so much about transfers out of Michigan and how it's become kind of a problem there. And this was a quarterback transfer, Joe Milton, who chooses Tennessee. And he'd been in the portal and clearly did his research and figured out this is where he wanted to go. And I'm going to ask you this, but Josh Heupel is definitely a guy who is focused on his offense. I believe a high tempo type of offense that he's inserting there at Tennessee. You saw what he did at UCF. You know a little bit about this guy. Is that a good fit?
I don't know, honestly.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I haven't watched like a ton of UCF and Heupel to know what his offensive system
Hmm.
is. This is my thought though on Joe Milton is
Wait
uh
for it.
now looking back, it's not going to be anything disparaging against him. It's going to disparage the school that he transferred from.
Okay,
They
that's
ruin
okay.
quarterbacks.
That's what I
They
know.
ruin quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to be a quarterback whisperer, but none of your guys perform? And Joe Milton
Yeah.
is a really talented guy. They were making Cam Newton comparisons before the year started, and I truly believe that
Jeez.
he is a good enough player that was ruined by coaching and by culture within a program that he was at.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to see success out of him. I really am. We'll see.
So let me put this on the the docket just real quick before we move on. If Milton goes to Tennessee, and I'm just throwing some stuff out here, and has success, let's say, and ends up being the starter, you see development. Do you really start to look at that kind of a project, and then look back at Harbaugh and say, okay, this is clearly like he's got to go. Because
Yep.
if this is a prime example of what happens, and again, I'm just throwing this stuff out here. If this happens,
Yep.
that this could be something they actually look at though, and are like, okay, there was clearly an issue.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be a direct indictment on Harbaugh, and I think that has to be a part of the evaluation process on him. If the quarterback that was supposed to be great and he's all 4 star, 5 star, whatever he
Hmm.
was, sucked at Michigan, goes somewhere else and has success, I think that falls directly on Harbaugh, and I think it's a fireable offense at that point,
Yep.
especially with his
Yep.
background. Like if he's a defensive coach and he has these offensive
Yep.
struggles, then maybe you say that he's bad at hiring offensive coaches, but he's an
Yep.
offensive guy. It's no
Nope, I,
excuse.
I agree with you. So that's why I wanted to throw that in there. Okay, so we are clearly counting down to the NFL draft to just a couple weeks away, right? God, a couple weeks away. It's next Saturday. No,
Yeah,
next
it's
Thursday through
the
Saturday. Yeah.
29th. Yeah.
So we have been selecting, our prospects every week. So did you get one for this week?
Of
Okay,
course I did.
throw it at me.
Yeah, I went I'm keeping it Big 10 like I
Yep.
said I would, but I went
Yep.
linebacker because I love some
Okay.
linebackers. I went with Micah
Oh yeah, I
Parsons.
actually just read
The
some stuff about him the other day.
Yes, he's the
Yeah.
man. Um, Linebacker out of Penn State did not play this past year. He had
Hmm.
opted out. But let me just read you some of his accolades from his time at Penn State. He was a Buckus Fitzgerald Linebacker of the Year in the Big Ten in
Okay.
2019, Consensus All American
Yep.
2019, First Team All Big Ten 2019, Cotton Bowl Defensive MVP 2019. In high school, he was a USA Today All American, American Family Insurance Defensive Player of the Year in high
Hmm.
school, first team freshman All American in 2018. And he was a guy who didn't even, wasn't a full starter his freshman year and probably should
Hmm.
have been. Um, And I'll just leave you with this. Um, Coming out of high school, 6'3", 235.
Out
He's
of
a
high
swole dude.
school.
Still ran like a 4.4 in the 40 at his pro day. So it's unofficial time, but he was blazing fast. He's strong as all get out. He has a nose for the football. He can cover. Smart player. Everything that you would want in a modern day
Yeah.
linebacker, he gives you. He can get after the passer. He can line up on the line of scrimmage. Or you can play him off of the ball. And he'll be an instant day one
Okay.
difference maker on a
That's what I was gonna
defense.
ask you. I mean, who would benefit from him the most, do you think?
Anybody really like needing a linebacker, and this is the issue with him. He's in my opinion like a top 10
Yeah,
talent. Like if I was ranking players on a big board,
sure.
he'd be a top 10 player. Linebackers are not top 10 values in the
Right, you
NFL
know that
anymore.
best. That was your position,
It's
you know?
yeah, it's just the evolution of the position. He'll be a first round pick,
Mhm.
no doubt. He will be underdrafted based off of how good of a player he is just by virtue of the devaluation of his
Yeah.
position. But anybody who is needing support in the middle of their defense, and that's linebacker or somebody who can get after the quarterback a little bit, should be interested in him.
Yeah, I mean, we were even talking the other day about the Tennessee Titans and just I mean, they could go anyway at number 22 and we were even saying they could possibly even take a linebacker. And the reasons for that is because there's a couple that their contracts are coming up soon and they haven't lived up to their potential and so, you think could they move on from them and at that number 22 spot you know that there'll be some good guys there so like you said the linebacker might not go in the top 10 but there's a high chance that a guy like that can go in the first round somewhere so a good name to keep in mind I'll stay with the defense and I'm going to go with a cornerback Caleb Farley cornerback out of Virginia Tech
Hmm.
6'2", 197, pretty good size. uh, I mean, I was reading Dane Brugler, who I talked to today. He's a draft analyst for The Athletic. He's
Yeah, Dane's pretty
phenomenal. I don't
good.
know if you've read his
Yep.
Beast booklet in terms of the draft, but my goodness, he said it took like a whole year to write. It's incredible
Yeah.
because he really breaks down the entire draft and every single pick that he makes. So I was reading through some of the things about Farley that he liked size, speed, reaction skills, comfort level ascends. So he's just an all around. It seems like top of the line guy that you want size wise, and he can do everything else. Has great physical tools. Excuse me, but the health is a concern with him, which I
Hmm.
feel like we say a lot sometimes about, injuries,
Sure.
just they have to look so closely at that nowadays. So I guess that you have to like look into that if that's the one negative thing if he's had a little bit of injury past that you have to kind of look past if the other tools are there. But I think he's going to go in the first round. Everything that I've seen in terms of mock drafts. Have you seen anything about him?
Yeah, a little bit.
And
And
he's a
and
little
you're right. He
raw too,
projects
because
as
he's only got 2 years of
yeah.
experience at cornerback.
And that's the deal with some of these guys, but you can coach that up if you got a really good coaching staff. And to your point, like he's seen as a guy who can be a day one starter type player, a guy who has potential
Mhm.
to be a game changer for a team. And again, this is a position that we've talked about before, but the evolution is unique because he's got the perfect size for what people want in a corner in the NFL. It's six foot
I
two,
know.
200 pounds. Like you want
Yeah.
that guy. And so I think that you know wherever he lands, he's going to have the opportunity to become a great player in
And
the
so,
NFL.
just to go back really quickly on, you said, he had started at cornerback just 2 years, so there's a little lack of experience there, but you said if you're in the right place, that they can work with you on that, and that doesn't seem to be a problem, just in terms of if you have that natural ability and you have the skill set, it should be something that you can transition into and be that starter.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a number of one-year wonders at multiple positions that go into the NFL and they have success. And maybe it's not starting right away, but they take that development curve and they really work with the player who
Yeah,
wants to be coachable, and they get them
yeah,
right up to speed. And I think that when you have athletic ability and when you have the intelligence to play the game and recognize and read and react, it's just a matter of
yep.
coaching, and they're put on there to do. Now, I want to change directions real quick because we got just a little bit of time left. Saw
Yep,
you put on
I
there
did.
Devontae
I
Smith,
did.
skinny, was it 6 foot 166?
166. And Joshua, let me add that
That's
he
sickly.
actually Brugler said in his article that he actually dropped 4 pounds since his pro day. Yep,
Jeez,
and
oh
that's a
jeez.
lot for anyone, in my opinion,
Well, yeah,
especially when
especially
you're an
when you're
athlete,
that
yeah.
slight. Like 166 is
Yeah,
tiny. Um,
like,
like
and 6'1"
tiny.
and 166?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
so,
interesting.
my question to you is, to me, it is a bit of a concern, and I know other people are like,
Yeah,
"You can't look at that, you gotta look at the talent, and how do you pass up somebody
yeah,
that has done what he's done on the field?" And I know he was at a program like Alabama. I know that many consider that a pro program in a way, but
right,
the thing is like, if he couldn't gain weight at Alabama on a strength program where I feel like it's gotta be one of the tops in the
right.
country, what's the problem here? Eh,
Don't know.
right?
I mean, some guys are just hard gainers. I'd still
You would
draft them.
still.
I would.
You think the upside is
Yeah, and I just make
way
sure.
way bigger. You're not worried
Yeah,
about the
and I
injury.
just make sure his
Okay.
ass was in the weight room. I'd make sure he was
Yeah.
eating. Some guys just they can't keep weight on. But I've
Yep.
watched enough tape on him to know how good of a player he is. And then I'll leave on this one. I don't know if you saw this news, but Justin
Yep.
Fields confirmed to
Yep.
multiple teams that he does
Yep.
have epilepsy, and so now that's a concern on a quarterback that's highly scrutinized. I saw some Twitter doctors out there saying that this isn't the first player to have epilepsy, and it is something that you can
Grow out
keep
of.
under control with medication, and people actually do grow out of it.
Yeah.
But it is now something that teams will be able to use to scrutinize them a little bit more.
It is unbelievable what these young men in terms of, health and they're picked apart to the core, right?
Hmm.
And I
Yep.
do look, maybe I side with Justin because I've covered Ohio State and I always am a little bit partial to them and the players there. But and I didn't cover Justin, obviously, but it just I look at him and he just has been picked apart. And
Hmm.
I know that most people have him still going in the first round, but I mean, there's all these other quarterbacks they predict to go above him, which I don't agree with. And it's just like, here's just another thing, like you said, that's added to the table. But I look at it in the way that, oh, he was able to do that and deal with this
Right.
and play at the highest stage, the highest level before anybody even knew about this. Like, to me, I'm
Yeah.
applauding him and being
Exactly.
like, "Look, this is what makes you a stronger person, a fighter, somebody who can overcome obstacles." Isn't that the tools they want when they bring in a
Yeah.
quarterback?
You would
I
think.
don't know, just it blows my mind that they can use things like this
Yeah.
against some of these young guys.
I'm with you. I mean, it was never a question before. I don't know why it's a question now. It's just something that's
Of
public.
course.
He's dealt with it. He's
No.
not missed a game because of it at
Yep.
Ohio State or Georgia. So, we'll see.
Yeah. Did you see that interview with him and Kirk Herbstreit and Eddie?
I, you know what? I saw it, but I didn't hear it because I was
Yeah,
out
check it
somewhere.
out sometimes. I think it's somewhere available online, but I thought it was a cool little interview. I listened to the first part specifically with Eddie, just kind of giving him advice in terms of leadership and just staying true to who you are. I think that was such great advice from Eddie. You don't need to be what all these other people are saying you need to be. He clearly was a winner at Ohio State because he was who he was. And yeah, you always got to take it up a notch when you get to the next level, but you don't need to listen to
Sure.
what everybody else is saying they want you to be. So,
Right.
yep, I thought it
That's
was
good
great,
advice. Always sound
right?
coming from Eddie.
Man, he can do no wrong. Maybe he listened to our podcast. I don't know. I tagged him in it. He's probably a little busy lately. So,
Yeah, a little
right?
busy
Okay,
right
real
now.
quick, where can they go to find up and coming talent? Joshua Perry. He's already talent, but he's here
Mm.
with like some big time names now.
It's just trying to do my part in the biz at RIP_JEP. Holler at your boy. When I'm not getting Emmy nominations, I am speaking to fourth
Yes.
graders and recording podcasts, among other things, and selling homes here in Central Ohio. I'm a busy man, but
See,
I love it.
he does it all, just like Eddie. He can balance it all. What can this man not do? You can find.
Well, I
Oh,
can't do Broadway
true.
like Eddie. That's
I
it.
mean, you could try. You
I
you
can
just
try. I don't
not
know if it'll
might
be
not
that good though.
succeed. You can find me at Kayla Anderson TV. I could probably do Broadway. I do sing. I just don't let a lot of people know about it because I'm kind of a humble person, even though I just bragged a little.
Sure.
So,
It's all good.
humble
The humble
brag.
brag.
It's a you got to do it sometimes. But we appreciate you tuning in for this episode of Press Pass. Again, we'll be back next week with our final countdown to the draft, and we'll have our final prospects. So look forward to that. Have a great week, guys.